So we're going to continue talking about the physical property presets. So if you look in your property editor, or the object browser, let's look there first. Make sure that the fabric and the garment involved, make sure that's highlighted, okay? This fabric here, the fabric of the garment involved. Now, here, as you know, you go to physical properties. If you have to scroll, make sure you get there to physical properties. And here there's preset simulation mode, and here there's stretch. Now, if you notice the stretch arrow here, this when you click on it, it expands into a sub menu. So I'm going to click on it, and here this is its sub menu. So it talks about the stretch of the fabric. It talks about the stretch of the fabric when it's warped, wefted, biased in those different ways. And the weft of the fabric has to do with the threads of the fabric going from right to left or going horizontally, let's put it that way, in this way, the threads that run this way. The warp instead, threads that run up and down, okay, vertically, and the bias instead horizontally. Now, usually the weft and the warp, the values are practically similar. Now, here on the top, here in the property editor, you see this slider, and this slider just moves everything together. So everything's sort of synchronized. But you can go and you can play with these individual properties. So I'm now going to show you basically when we're going to simulate first. Okay, so let's simulate, see what the fabric's like. And let's pull and tug here, the sleeves here. Okay. Now let's go back here and let's just take this slider and push it all the way up like that and see what happens when we simulate. Now, if you notice, it's really stiff. It's not like before when I was pulling and tugging at it. Okay? Because what you've done by increasing the value, it's become, the weave of the fabric has become more dense. So then it's like really, it's less, it's more stiff, in other words, less stretch. Okay, so let's take off the simulation and go back to this here, over here. Now let's take the same slider and slide it all the way down and simulate. Okay, you see how it drops? It has become more loose. So this is, try to understand this concept here. And all of this to say that it's really very important always in bringing out the fabric details in certain garments. I'll be showing you in later videos how you can use these properties to your advantage. Okay, let's take off simulation now and let's go back. And we'll put it to the values more or less. Now, this again, the bias is the same thing because the bias here, if you increase, let's just increase this alone here and simulate. Here again, you see that it's sort of a stiff, okay? It's less loose. Let's go back again and let's take the bias and push it all the way down, and you see automatically it just gets stretchier and more loose. Okay, let's take off the simulation and go back. And the bias, okay, we'll just, I guess this was the value. Now, after this, you're going to find, if you scroll, the bending, okay? And here again, you have this little arrow and you expand it and you get a submenu of the bending warp, weft, and bias. So the bending just tells you how much, how easily the fabric bends or curves. Here you have the slider here, general slider that you just, and you know, it's bending along the warp, bending along the weft, and bending along the bias. So yeah, I'm gonna just show you the general and a way to do it. And then after, you're gonna experiment yourself with these different sliders. Just keeping in mind the definition of each property. So here we're going to, we can take a look at these baggy pants. And for that, we're going to highlight the default fabric, okay? Because we're referring to this. So what we're going to do is this bending. We're going to just take this slider and just push it up, all the way up, and simulate. So here we've simulated and it's practically blown everything up. It's blown the pants up. Okay, look at that. It's like, it's similar to the pressure we had applied when we were in that previous video when I did like an example of a cushion. So it's telling you really this bending, how much the fabric wants to bend or curve. So if you the higher it is, the less fold you're gonna get, because if you look at this carefully, I mean, it's like smoother, in other words. Okay? But let's see what happens when I turn the values down. Now go back here, you click, and here it is, the slider. Let's go all the way down and see what happens. Check your 3D window. You see what happens? It becomes floppier. So there again, keep in mind that this property, that it just reacts like this, okay? So it becomes floppier and it drapes a bit. It folds easier, in other words. So here we get on to the weight, and the weight of the fabric. It's self-explanatory because how much the fabric weighs, and this could be very important in let's say draping. Okay, if you want your fabric to hang better, you may want to, it needs to weigh a little more, so you want to increase these values here. The thickness of the fabric, there again, it's well, how thick it is, but the thickness I'm going to show you later on how to use these values here, and with along with thickness rendering and additional thickness. Okay, so this shows us just the thickness of the fabric. So there, the bending and buckling ratio and stiffness here, basically we're talking about the same thing: the creasing, the folding, the draping, and you need to play around with these values. I can't really show you every little value here because you need to experiment and learn something on your own by trial and error. Okay, I will tell you that the dynamic friction and the static friction, though, um, for example, it has to do with simulation, and it's like the fabric behaves in a certain way and starts sliding around. Like the static friction is like how sticky the fabric is when it's trying to start moving from like a standstill motion there. And the dynamic friction is like how smooth um the fabric moves once you're simulating, okay? The smoothness of the movement. Now, these I can demonstrate it to you when we do simulation in the future. So not right now. But the important thing is that you know that what these the stretch is very important, the bending, the weight, the thickness, and then you play around with the individual properties so that you can understand much better how to bring out details in your garment. So thank you for watching and see you in the next video.